Have you ever wondered what it's like to go to Berkeley, be an environmental engineer, or get your PhD? Well, in this episode, we discover all three of those things. Hey 1% Nation, I'm Jake Voorhees, and you are watching episode 30 of the 1% Engineer Show, where we empower young engineers to rise to the top 1% of their career. Today on the show, we interview Alex Pelasco to discover all three of those and more. So please enjoy. If you have any more questions for Alex, make sure you comment below, and we'll make sure to connect you guys. Hey 1% Nation, today our featured guest is Alex Pelasco. Alex is a PhD student, doctoral candidate, however you might call it, at UCLA, and she has a illustrious academic career at several California universities, including her undergraduate at UC Berkeley, and even while in high school she conducted some research at Stanford. I'm sure you have heard of these three schools, and as mentioned, her focus is environmental engineering, so she's going to tell you all about her research. She's going to tell you about the scholarships and fellowships she has won, and also how she placed third, right, in the Grad Slam competition, which I think she'll correct me later on, but I think it's a competition and presentation for graduate students at UCLA, and that's actually how I found her. I saw her presentation on YouTube, so you can probably check that out. I'll link that up in the show notes. But Alex, why don't you fill in any gaps to that intro to 1% Nation and tell us a little bit about what you do outside of engineering.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me. I'm from originally Arizona, the hot desert, although it's pretty hot down here in Southern California as well. And when I'm not engineering it up all the time in the lab, I do like to tap into my right brain, the art side, I guess. And I like to make art with my bacteria. And so I'll take these petri dishes and I'll plate different colored bacteria on them, and then I'll resin them with kind of like, you see scorpions, that are encased in stuff. And I'll basically make little bacteria coasters. And I think it's really, really cool. And so I kind of freeze the microbes in time and space. And then people sometimes are really cool, like happy to set their drinks on it. Sometimes they're really skeptical. They're like, whoa, what is this? So anyway, microbes are my life in and out of the lab. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad you talked about the right brain and the artsy side of your life as well, which is a new sort of addition to the whole STEM movement, which is, they call it STEAM, right? They throw the word arts into the acronym, and I think they've debunked the whole left brain, right brain type thing anyway. There is no like one-sidedness for people, and I, like yourself, I like to think I fall somewhere in that hybrid type of personality, so I'm really, really glad you mentioned that. Okay, Alex, so let's jump into you and your background, and you seem incredibly focused. You knew, I guess in high school, this would have been maybe not quite 10 years ago for you, but a long time ago you knew that environmental engineering, or sort of the merger of engineering and biology and the environment in general, was for you. So how did you come to focus on environmental engineering? What made you want to do that? What makes you so passionate about this field?
I sort of stumbled upon environmental engineering by trial and error, for sure. It was, I think I just started maybe trying and erroring a little bit sooner than my peers at the time. As a kid, my parents were always like, Alex, you really want to find your passion. It'll help you drive you, success in life, whatever you want to do. Just start trying things. And I said, okay, sounds like a great idea. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And so everything from like, I thought I wanted to be an actress for a little while. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and so I interned in a hospital. For a second, I thought I wanted to be a politician. Glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I would shadow with a local government official. I tried all these different things, and I thought they were all interesting, but I didn't really necessarily click. And so during this time, and sort of the background, my mom's actually an environmental engineer, and so growing up throughout my childhood, I sort of just exposed to everyday environmental engineering things. Like she would have plans on the table of different areas in our city that had water contamination and different different sites of where the water was just unusable. It was there, but it just couldn't be used because of different pollutants, and how she would have to try to clean it up and see sort of from like a beginning to end of how water would go from unusable, undrinkable to now being, I mean, it probably goes through our pipes. And I thought that was actually really cool. And so I started looking for different things on the internet, and I stumbled upon this program called Students on Ice. And it was, I feel like, a rare bird in the sense that it was a program that takes high school students, college students, professors, grad students, and puts them on a ship, a Russian icebreaker ship, and goes to the North Pole and does a bunch of different environmental experiments and tracking of different like glacial melt, of different like microbial diversity, very, very simple experiments, but for like a whole summer. And so I was like, that kind of like blew my world. And kind of when you're with no technology, you're with just the people on the boat, just nature. And that struck me as something really unique. Also, I was like, this is a place that, I mean, maybe no one's ever been in this particular little area. I felt like I was discovering something new, whether that was actually true or not. And that I still actually have that feeling with research, just kind of the feeling that I love and I seek after, is sort of discovering something new. And so I think I sort of stumbled upon my passion. It started young, and I think sometimes that intimidates high schoolers. They're like, I don't know what I want to do. How, that's just, I think most people don't find what they're passionate about in high school. But for me, it was honestly trial and error. and now because of that, I'm doing something that I love and that I feel like I could do for a very long time.
That's so good. Yeah, that's so good. Trial and error, 1% Nation. Sometimes, is what my dad always said, you don't know what you like until you figure out what you don't like. So I'm really happy that it may have taken a boat to the North Pole for you, but you found your path. That trip sounds amazing. Sometimes you have to go to science camp or get on a North Pole boat to find your journey in life, guys. So that's what it's all about. I love that story, Alex. Thank you. So you have basically been to every good school in California in some fashion. Everybody knows about Stanford. Everybody certainly knows about Berkeley, and UCLA is a great school. I actually have a friend who just finished up her PhD in something very different from what we study. She is like art history of ancient Inca civilizations. So she was doing no Petri dish research, but I know it's a great school. So I want to ask you, Alex, lots of 1% Nation, the younger portion of the community, they are trying to make sure that the school they choose is the right fit for them. A lot of these people who want to be engineers, they have great grades and they may have extracurriculars like you did. So it's really their choice, but sometimes we can get paralyzed with options. So I'd love to hear how you chose Berkeley for your undergrad. And then also, what made you want to choose UCLA for your doctorate road, your PhD, so you can one day be Dr. Pelasco?
One day in the far future. I chose Berkeley for many reasons, but you're right. I think it sometimes can get paralyzing when you have so many different schools and there's so many different reasons to attend one school over the other. It really, I think what you do in high school can totally, if you take a step back and sort of think about what you liked or what you didn't like about high school, can actually help guide you. I really liked research. So I did research in high school at Stanford, looking at bacteria that could make bioplastics. And then I also interned at Arizona State University in high school. Well, actually, most universities like having high school students. That's part of the grants. And so you think sometimes you're too young, you're like, there's no way. But actually, there's high school students in our lab right now. So I realized I really liked that. So it narrowed me down to a university or a research-centered school. So if that's something you sort of like or you think you want to get into, I said, okay, that narrows it down a little bit from the schools that I got into as opposed to maybe a smaller liberal arts college or something like that. And it just so happened that the research I liked, the little tiny project that I felt like I had some ownership over, there was a lab at Berkeley that did something really similar. And I thought that was really cool. And so I reached out to the professor thinking that she would probably never get back to me, because I was like, who am I? I'm just a little friend trying to seek out what school I want to go to, or a senior in high school. And she actually responded, which was sort of crazy, and was really encouraging, and wrote back to me, and that really made me feel sort of connected. And I liked California and Berkeley in general is very pro environment and really puts a lot of emphasis on that. And so that was really important to me in choosing the school, that they were going to promote the area of research, the area of education that I wanted to go into. And so for anyone looking at colleges, I think making sure the school really promotes what you're going to go into and take classes and things like that. And so I really like that. And then also Berkeley, in the environmental science and engineering, you have an option to take a thesis track. And so I was like, wow, that sounds like a really good idea. If I'm thinking about doing my PhD, I should probably kind of give a test drive for this whole writing of a dissertation thing, the whole research thing. Yeah. And so I think a lot of schools do that. And so that helps narrow it down as well, in the sense I was like, okay, this school will give me exposure to research, give me exposure to what maybe writing in this academic way will be like. So I actually feel going to Berkeley, also, although undergrad was a shock, I'm not going to lie, I struggled very hard.
Yeah, me too.
My freshman year.
Me too. Oh yeah. No
yes,
kidding.
yes. If you're struggling in college right now, do not worry. Yeah. I was there. But I actually think that helped a lot. People that are in high school, you're in your top of your class, you're doing really well in your classes, you feel like you've never gotten a B in your life, and then you go to college, and I was like, wow, this is really hard. And I'm not gonna lie, it definitely on your mental health is hard, but it makes you, I think, a better person. It's made me, I think, a stronger individual, also for rejection and things like that. So I wanted somewhere that I also would get rejection. I wanted people that would excel above me, that I could look up to, and things like that. And so I really like that culture and kind of the funky vibe and the diversity. And then for my PhD, it's a totally different ballgame. So if you're in college, right, you're applying to college, it's the application is pretty standard. You sort of feel disconnected almost from the panel. That's like the secret room of people that decide yes or no in your application. But grad school's entirely different. This is like applying to a job you will be at for 6 years or more. It's a much different process. It's much more personal, which I really liked. It's still an application. You still have that sort of formal essay, things like that. But it becomes much more about your advisor and who you're going to work with. The school is a small portion of it, right? You want a school, with a good name. But honestly, I always say it's either that you choose two. It's like school name, advisor, and lab culture. Choose two that are most important to you and stick with that. So, for example, for me, lab culture and my advisor were very, very important. For me, the school name was good, but I really wanted to be careful about who I was going to sort of commit the next 6 years to, and then also the type of students I'll work with. And so I chose UCLA because the advisor I work with she did her PhD at Berkeley under the professor that I worked under. So it's kind of this right. But no, that's why. So even in college, or even I still keep in touch with the professor I worked with in high school. It's one of those things. It's never too early to start and just reach out to different people, and you'll never know that actually how they'll help you later on in life. And she does very similar research to what I did in college and high school. And so I thought that was great. I kind of hit the ground running when starting my PhD. And then also the lab culture here, it's a bigger lab, which I liked. social person, is contrary to what people think about engineers. And and I liked the UCLA atmosphere because there was a lot of different students together. We're always interacting. You were never alone. I actually thought about going to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, but when I visited, actually the professor was great and the school was good, but the lab was just super small, and I would have been in a room probably all alone for a long time. And so I knew that, you know what, right now there's the excitement, but 6 years down the road, you have to wonder about what kind of person and environment that you might like to be in. And so those things I think really came together and made UCLA kind of a prominent choice. And also, as graduate students, we try to think about funding a little bit. Yeah. Okay, I need to eat. Yeah. Mom and dad no longer pay for me. They're like, this is your choice. Good luck. And so at the larger universities, there tends to be different and sometimes more opportunities for funding. Private universities have their own. I mean, sometimes they're more well endowed, so it's easier to get just regular funding from your advisor. But here we have opportunities. I've TA'd, so I've been in discussion leading students on how to do problems, and then I've also had like a fellowship here where the school says we'll give you funding for 4 years to make sure that you stay. We want you, and that felt really good. I'm like, hey, they want me.
Yep.
That's awesome. So yeah, those sort of things. A combination kind of makes for like the just right, and kind of led me to just a little bit south in Southern California.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that story. So many nice pieces there, 1% Nation, going all the way back to you reaching out to that professor at Stanford while you're in high school and you kind of knew what you wanted to do. But this has been a theme when I talk to people who have had breakthroughs, even early on. Ask for nothing and you will receive nothing, guys. All you have to do is reach out, and you never know. A lot of times it can be 1 for 1 or 2. You send 2 emails and someone will email you back and say, yep, come on out. And even if the timing isn't right, it's another contact that you can have down the road. You also talked about how you've kept in touch with, I don't know if it was your high school or your Berkeley professor, but keeping in touch, maintain that network, because you're always in the people business, guys. It's all about who you know. I read somewhere on Glassdoor that 80% of job and research and career opportunities in general, they're not even posted anywhere, right? So unless you know someone and you're maintaining those relationships and you're keeping in touch, I mean, at minimum, sending emails once a year. I mean, it's so easy to send one every 3 months or so, but you're always in the people business. And then the third thing I want to recap on, people are so caught up in, I want to choose the right school because of someone else's thinking. It's like, no, you have to choose the culture that you want, the belief system. Like at Berkeley, they love the environment, they support the environment. It's so West Coast thinking there. I think UC Davis and Berkeley and that whole epicenter, there's like more bike lanes per capita. Like that's just very progressive thinking, very environmental, very everything. So choose a school that is right for you. Don't worry about what an employer, what you think they want. What people want is someone who is pursuing their passions. That's actually what they want, that you have blazed your own trail and chosen a job, a research position, a school that's the right fit for you. So I'm so happy that this is what you've done, and this is how you've been so successful this whole way. You're doing everything right as far as what people would tell you. So this kind of, I love the story of how you have chosen UCLA. So, and you kind of have touched on this a little bit along the way, that you found that you loved research, and maybe this is a precursor to your answer. But many students, they think, or even maybe young professionals who have worked for 5 years and they get into that 22, 27, 28, they think 30 is too late, but they're approaching, late 20s. They say, maybe I want to go back and get my PhD. And a lot of schools, they make you get your master's first, and it's kind of like one straight shoot where it'd be like a 5 years for both. But it's quite a commitment. It can be a risk. I mean, if you're following your dreams and following your heart, it's never a risk. But lots of people question it. So, Alex, what made you want to get your PhD? because you knew, seems like you've known, like you chose Berkeley with that research hunch, but what was it, just a few points maybe, why you wanted to be Dr. Palasko, why you wanted to pursue that PhD and make that commitment for your career?
That's a great question. I have always wanted to do continue on to a PhD, not really for the doctor, but more so for the fact that I liked the thrill of discovering or possibly discovering something completely unknown, and being in this world that we interact with every day, and being able to be like, I found something new, and then inviting people in to be like, hey, look what I found, and look how this applies to us, and actually matters as small as this is. And then for me, in the context of the environment and how that affects our health and how that affects the things that we interact with, and the marine life and the biota and things like that. And so the idea of discovering something new, I think is something you truly it's rare to find in a career and in a job. And really, graduate school or maybe a startup with a research lab is one of the only times that I think you have the opportunity to explore that. And especially in a research lab, it's not necessarily even for a profit. It's for the benefit of society. And as engineers, which I think is really cool, and why I chose engineering as opposed to environmental science or microbiology or something like that, is that we are applied as a profession. Our goal, whatever we do, is we want to be able to apply the technologies that we produce or find or create for the betterment of society in some way, shape, or fashion. And that really stuck with me. And I thought once I could learn that skill and really master that skill through a PhD, I think I could go out and really cause even more change for the better. And grad school, it is, you get time to really learn how to figure out things on your own. Yeah. Sometimes also don't know people get in a job or in a career, you're worried about what your boss gives you. You know, they give you a task, you try to complete it to the best you can. Here, it's like your advisor's like, here's a problem, good luck solving it. And so it's up to you. And I struggle with this. Yeah, in the beginning, you're like, okay, so it's really a skill in problem solving. And then you realize that you can sort of tackle any issue. You just have to figure out, it's just how to start. And I think that's what sometimes makes people nervous, is that it's too big of a problem. It's too much. I don't know enough about it. And it's grad school teaches you, especially PhD, is how to take something you know nothing about and turn it into bite-sized chunks and problems that you can solve and look up. And from anything from, I have no idea how to get this soil into this little container. How am I going to do this? And there's nothing online that's going to tell you how to do it. Or how do I, a lot of lab work is orally passed down. It's not online, and it's just trial and error. And then you get very comfortable with failure, which I actually think is a good thing, in the sense that if I fail, it's okay to fail, right? It's okay. And sometimes in a job, if you go straight to industry, or maybe even realize it's an industry, and that's why you want to go back to school, is that it's scary to fail. You don't want to disappoint someone who's watching you or counting on you. And in a PhD, this is sort of the one time you're the boss. You're the janitor, you're the CEO, you're the everything of your project. And so it's, you get out of it as much as you put in. And so I really like this time. And also, I mean, it can be hard going from working back to grad school. This is not the road to a lot of money, but for me, I like it because, it helps you focus, in the sense you don't need a lot. And we're students, and this bond of like, we're all just sort of struggling together, and we're all just like taking advantage of just like the awesome local things you do that are cheap, and you hang out with like your lab friends, and you take advantage of sort of these final years of being in a university. Like undergrad, you're like, I just want to get out, I just want to complete, and I finished. My parents are happy. But in grad school, it gives you a little bit of time to soak in and enjoy the awesome perks that is a university, where you get to take classes. As a grad student, our advisors pay for our tuition, so I can take whatever classes I want, become an expert in whatever sort of little niche I want, and it's easy, and there's very little risk and high reward. And this job, it's not like I have a job 9 to 5 and I have to fit it in after hours. This is what I'm here for. And so if anyone is thinking about it, I would to them to think about those kind of pros of going to grad school. That's why
So good. All of your answers have so many nice nuggets for 1% Nation. I mean, every time I can go back and really hit on 2, 3, 4 points, but starting is always the hardest part. I'm going to go back to that. Just like you said, sometimes people are just so intimidated by a tough challenge, and going to grad school or figuring out if you want to get your PhD or going back, I mean, that can seem like an insurmountable task, an insurmountable obstacle, but just getting rolling, and when you have a big paper, a big project, whatever, whether it's work or you're a student, you said breaking it up into manageable chunks, that is awesome. There's a couple other things in there, but this is pretty good. I mean, you definitely, I can see, I think that one thing that's really cool when you talk to people about what they do and their path to arriving here today. First of all, you have no idea what's in front of you, right? It's going to get more and more awesome, but you can see the smile, you can see like how happy you are that you are here. And I went to grad school at UW-Madison. I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I was a research assistant, so I was making like $19,000 a year. So it's like we all joke about how broke we are, and it's like this little lab family, right? And whenever there's a seminar, it's like, oh, is there free lunch? And it's like you won't go because they're so broke. But it's so funny. So this is great. I'm really happy just to like see that radiating out of you when you talk about your road to getting here. Okay, so this is really good. I mean, I think you've provided a ton of insight as to how you picked your school and how you chose your emphasis area, environmental engineering, and what made you want to get your PhD. This is really good. Just a little side question. I'd love to hear, because I've read your LinkedIn, I read your like UCLA bio or whatever, but like, and I'm even an engineer, and what you do is like way too complicated even for me. But I'd love to hear just in a nutshell like what it is that you're up to. Another thing that you talked about 2, 3, 4 minutes ago was having an impact on the world and trying to change the world, and that's really what PhD is all about, is that you're always inching that research world further. You're doing something that no one else has done before. When you defend your dissertation, that's what they're going to grill you with. It's like, why is this significant, right? So I'd love to hear just in the in ways that I can understand it, what it is that you're up to with your research. This is a side question that we didn't plan, but I would love to hear, and I'm sure 1% Nation as well, but what you're working on and this type of thing, what your research revolves around.
Absolutely. So I sort of have, it's like a 2-part series of my research. And the first one is trying to develop and engineer this microbial, just happy community that can tackle multiple groundwater pollutants. So over the years, different industries, whether it's, just anything we think with metal degreasing agents, things with, I think, military, think of just anything with electronics. They use a lot of different products to make their machinery work. And before a lot of these different properties are known about chemicals, they don't know how to dispose of them, and they don't know if it's good or bad, or if it's kind of just like water, or if it's something toxic. So over the years, and lack of just knowledge, these different chemicals end up in the water, in the groundwater. The stuff that we like to drink, easiest access to get us to drink, and so I work on trying to develop different types of bacteria that can work together and team up together to tackle different pollutants at the same time. So think of something, imagine if you're like a garbage man and we're living on Earth and Mars, and the garbage man can live and clean up garbage both on Earth and on Mars, even with the crazy different environments. And so that's kind of what I'm creating, but in the ground for our water. And so these bacteria should be able to handle all different types of conditions, whether they have oxygen or no oxygen. And then my second part of my PhD, after these bacteria are working really well in the ground, and then I'm making and developing a kit that can basically detect these beneficial microbes. So bacteria that can clean water, many times have very similar attributes. They kind of look the same. They have similar enzymes and things like that. So I'm creating a tool that can detect when there is a beneficial microbe. And so someone will be able to go out in the real world and look at a polluted site and be able to quickly, almost like a pregnancy test for, hey, there's some bacteria that are degrading and that are alive and eating these contaminants. We should either culture them, optimize their growth, maybe transport them to a different contaminated site with the same pollutants. And so I'm figuring out some good bacteria, and then also testing for the good bacteria in the ground beneath our feet.
Awesome. I can tell that you have given the sort of, I don't want to say, sort of the layman's description quite a bit. I've talked to lots of researchers and technical people who just don't have the ability to break it down and just use everyday lingo and talk about what they do. You did a great job doing that. I've also read that that's one of the aspects of the word genius. Is one of the definitions of the word genius is the ability to take something super duper complicated and explain it to everyone. So great job with that. Okay, Alex, so we have the final main question here, and then we're going to get into our 1% round where I fire you 5 fast questions. But before that, really quick, you don't have to go too far into it because I think we've covered a lot of this stuff, how you got involved with things early with high school and like the Grad Slam Challenge and your fellowships and scholarships, which they don't just give those away. You have to apply, you have to go out and hustle, you have to build relationships. But I would love to hear maybe just one core or a few examples of how your involvement in all this extra stuff. You can maybe use the Grad Slam Challenge. I don't know if it's too early because I think that was just this spring, but maybe some examples of how your extracurricular activity in these things that, yes, are connected to your academic career, how these have maybe been talking points in the room for networking events, how maybe you've met people through these, or maybe someone sees your resume, and how this extra stuff, right, making you 1% status, how it has potentially just led to something else, and how if you weren't doing those things, that opportunity would have never come up for you, and a little story with that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I have 2 examples. One with Grad Slam, which is something that a lot of colleges and universities are doing. Okay. It's become a popular thing, and which I love that experience. So Grad Slam, the 3-minute pitch of your research to anyone, should be to professors and your friends and family, sort of thing. So recently, I was asked to present the 3-minute talk to the board members that are help fundraise and that provide the donors to UCLA. And Henry Samueli, who is responsible for the Samueli Engineering School at UCLA, happened to be there and listened to our research, and also the man who is responsible for Powell Library at UCLA were there. And that was, had I not done this 3-minute talk, this would have never happened. And it was really a unique opportunity to pitch my research to this group of individuals that are very different than anyone I had in the audience before, and really talk about what our lab needs, what the school needs, what the engineering department needs to help make this research go forward. And that I felt was really special in the sense this small opportunity led to this ability to ask, have an ask, and they wanted to know, what do you need? This sounds great. We really like the idea of this. Can you patent it? Do you need help with equipment? And that really shook me as something I never expected to ever be in a room with these people and to take me as an equal and want to hear my ideas. And so I thought that was something that I had no idea that I was really shocked and pleasantly surprised to do. And then also, sort of on the other end of that, I'm part of the Graduate Society of Women Engineers. So any women out there that are thinking about being engineers, it's a really great organization. There's also an undergrad one. And I'm on the board of that. And that has actually brought me into a lot of outreach activities with different schools and high schools and undergrads, and communicating science to much younger students you're trying to keep their attention. Elementary school students, it's like 30 seconds. So you have to be really interesting to keep their attention. And so the Grad Society of Engineers has opened the door to helping me find undergrads that can work in the lab that I think are really exceptional. And then also to reach out to students that I really see myself in, where they're maybe struggling or they don't know if engineering is right for them, and they have doubt, and I try to bring them out of their shell and encourage them, like, no, you don't have to be an A student to be passionate about this or to like this. You don't have to be, the smartest person in the room to want to be an engineer. And so these being part of these smaller groups has helped forward the ability of my lab to have funding, but also for me to outreach to people that know nothing about this field and that will replace me one day. And so it feels really good to give back to the younger, and then to my current lab. And so I'm not involved in a ton of things, but I try to choose wisely in the areas that I know can fulfill the things that I want out of life. And so research is one, and then giving back and volunteering is another. And so those things I think have really connected me and provided these opportunities that I would have never known. Also, I found one of my best friends in these groups, so that's cool too. You meet a lot of good, cool people that become your best friend and get you through the tough times. So, yeah. Although, yeah, that's good.
Anything else? No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna go into my mistakes. I didn't feel like I've made many a mistake though, so don't worry if you make mistakes.
That is a lightning round question, so you almost
okay, good. Okay, good.
You almost were a little psychic there. So on top of engineer, you're also a psychic. So that's great. Yeah, I think one of the things what I'd like to add to that is, this is what I tell my friends, but the more that you do, and even strategically do, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Sometimes you can't stretch yourself too thin and give your time to everything. One of the things that the entrepreneurial world says that unless it's a hell yes, then it's a no, right? So you have to be careful with stretching yourself too thin, but sometimes the more that you do, the more that it empowers and enables you to do that next thing and that next thing. And both of your examples are really good, because if you had never given that presentation, you would have never had the opportunity to meet these people who are very influential in the founding of the engineering program at UCLA, and it's just led to that next thing and that next thing, and who knows where it's going to go for you from here. So that's an awesome story, Alex. I really appreciate all that. So here we go, 1% round. So this is like a lightning round. I'm going to give you 5 quick questions, and feel free. It's supposed to be fast, it's supposed to be short, because you have given so much value on the front end already with those 5 questions. And then really I snuck in a bonus question there for you, asking about your research, just for those of you who may be considering an academic road in environmental engineering. Wanted to get a little more info about Alex's research. So Alex, are you ready for the 1% round?
I'm ready.
Ready? Great. Okay, so what is one personal habit that contributes to your success?
Waking up early.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a morning person. I'm not really a morning person, but I find when I get up early, my ability to have grit and perseverance increases tenfold.
This is a very, very common response to things that enable people to be successful and productive. And some people say, well, I can't get up early. Well, make yourself get up early for 2 weeks straight, and then you'll find out that it's actually not so hard. Okay, let's get into that mistake question. So if you could talk about one mistake that you made as a student to help out 1% Nation and maybe learn from that mistake, and your road to today, what would that be, and what can we learn from you about that?
Mistake I've made, I think, is trying to plan my future too far in advance. It's good to have plans and goals and things like that, but when you start trying to solidify where you're going to go to school or what you're going to do or what job, who you're going to work with, too much, I think it sometimes for myself sets you up for disappointment or sets you up to think that you're failing even when you're really not, and it's actually the path you're supposed to be on. And so if I had to go back and tell my younger self something, it would be to not worry too much about the far future and just cast out as many nets and not have as many notions about what should happen, what needs to happen in the future. So also, one other thing, never put yourself as a recommender. I accidentally did that once recently. It was by total mistake. I was like, I actually put myself as the recommender. So anyway, so not too much planning, and don't put yourself as a recommender.
Maybe you can elaborate on that second one. I'm not really sure if everyone would know what a recommender is.
What I mean? Yeah. So I was applying to a small scholarship, actually a part of Society of Women Engineers, and they asked for a recommendation. And my advisor is currently on leave, and so we were doing everything via email. And I thought in the recommendation slot, I was like, oh, email, and I put my own email, not thinking that it was her email. So all of a sudden, I get an email for a recommendation. I was like, why am I getting an email? That's really strange. So that's where planning in advance was probably needed to happen more. But it was one thing I was like, wow, this has never happened to me. And it was almost comical. My advisor was like, Alex, this is sort of funny. So luckily I was able to send it over to my advisor and she could submit it. But I was like, wow, what happened here? So even the best of us make mistakes in short-term simple mistakes, and then long-term of trying to overthink things.
Very good, very good. That's great advice. So, when I started this show, I very commonly would put a book in the background, and I'm a big fan of using these authors and using these thought leaders to gain information for myself. So if you could recommend one book to 1% Nation, what would that be and why?
I'm currently reading I Contain Multitudes by Ed Young, and I love it. I think it's like highly recommended. I want to say like Bill Gates recommended the book, which I just found out, and it discusses the evolution sort of modern day microbiology and how that came to be, as well as current research demonstrating the necessary connections between microbes and humans. And I thought that was really cool and relevant to my research, even as an environmental engineer. And I love seeing the history of how and reading the history of how humans came to find something that we can't see with the naked eye. And living in the world of 10 to the minus 6 meters, this book I thought was awesome. and I wish I would have been there to see like Leeuwenhoek, find the animalcule, which is really just a bacteria, for the first time. And so anyway, the guy, he does a great job in bringing these complicated concepts down to everyday layman's terms that I thought were really great. I would highly recommend I Contain Multitudes. It's great.
Great recommendation. Check that book out. Recommendation. So, beyond the suggestions, the advice you've already provided for your biggest mistake and your academic career, other camera shut out, but that's okay. What's the best single piece of advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received was from my grandmother, who's 95. She's great. And she said, don't compare yourself to others, Alex. You, as hard as it may be, it's important to only evaluate your own progress and how you feel that you're doing, and not to compare to other people and what they're doing or how fast they're going. Something as simple as homework. When I was an undergrad, it's hard not to compare how quickly you're doing a problem set to another person. And it gave me an anxious feeling to be like, I'm not solving it as fast as everyone else or in the group, and it's really important to take a step back and just be like, I'm doing the best that I can do, and that's enough. And in research, it's still the same. Even though they say a PhD is not a race, it's still so important not to compare yourself to how quickly someone else is publishing or what, someone else, how quickly someone is getting a raise compared to you or something like that. You really have to hold your own standards and just know that you're trying your best, and that's all you can do. And I think my grandma really told that to me a lot, and that was really stuck with me throughout life. So my advice. Thanks.
It's good advice, yeah. Everybody learns at a slightly different pace. Everybody learns a different way. I think a lot of people get caught up in the success of others and what's going on around them. And what that's really doing is just distracting you from accomplishing your goals and finding that success for yourself. So don't worry about what everyone else is doing, 1% Nation. Just focus on the task at hand for yourself, one day at a time, and you will be successful. Okay, Alex, so we have one 1% round question remaining. What is one thing, it can be a technology, it can be anything you choose, what is one thing that you're pumped for right now that you know is going to be something that's game-changing in the future? This is why maybe a technology or a software or some research that's like just coming out right now. What's one thing that you are hyped up for the future that's going on right now that just gets you really excited for tomorrow and 5-10 years from now?
Oof.
I like how you don't have a plan for these. This is really good. I got you on the spot. You gotta really answer authentically. What is going on with this camera?
Yes.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I think so in the past 10 years, we've gained, I think, a tremendous amount of knowledge about how microbes and bacteria impact our world. A lot of the times, I think we focus on how they're bad and how they harm us or how we can get rid of them and disinfect and things like that, and antimicrobial. But I think we've started to also realize the flip side of the coin about how they're essential and how they make our lives function. We took away all bacteria, we would all be dead. And nothing we'd have, plants would not grow, we would not have oxygen we breathe, it would be a sad situation. So I think we're starting to realize, and there's a lot of research about also how humans we're made more of microbes than probably anything else in our bodies. And I think that research really excites me, and then I'm doing something more tangential to that, but in particular, there's a lot of research on the gut microbiome and different, the community of bacteria that make up our different systems. Bacteria in the gut digest our different vitamins and nutrients, how that dictates our health. But one company I'm really excited about seeing what they do, they're called Naked Biome, and they try to develop products for your skin based upon your microbiome. So they take a swab of your skin and try to figure out how best to give you a treatment or for acne or for eczema or whatever's going on with your skin on your arms or on your face or anything. And I thought that was a really neat way of integrating like our microbiome and our biology with also sort of something that's on the surface that you don't think of bacteria being on necessarily, or good bacteria being on, right? You always at Purell, like my dad's really, and that's like the saving grace, Purell your hands. But to think about the different communities on our body and how we want to promote good bacteria, I think there are key to a longer life. And them as, I'll call these guys a technology. Bacteria, you're a technology. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes and where else people are going to start realizing the microbiome is important. Yeah, I'm excited.
Not all bacteria is bad, guys. Keep that in mind. Bacteria is a technology today. Okay, Alex, well, thank you so much for those 10, 11, 12 pieces of awesome information about your road, about your knowledge in environmental engineering. So we'll wrap this up by saying, or by asking if there are any engineers who want to ask you a few more questions, how can they get in touch with you? How can they follow the rest of your story? What's the best way to find out where your research goes from here? And then we'll say goodbye.
Absolutely. I love answering emails from people interested about engineering, so always feel free to contact me. I think the best way is probably through my email, which is A Polasco, my last name, at g.ucla.edu. So A Polasco at g.ucla.edu.
I'll link it up in the video.
And then also, awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then my people are welcome to reach out on my Facebook, Alex Polasco. I post a lot of science stuff there too. And then also Instagram, which is also just Alex Polasco. I have actually just posted like the bacteria art that I made. If you're interested, I submitted it to the American Society of Microbiology, and it like the plate, and it was called "Don't Cry Over Spilt Bacteria." It was like looks like milk. It looks like spilled milk with a little carton. Anyway, so you can see it on Instagram. It was cool. I made it to like the finalist. So any of those medias, I am super open to.
Awesome. Reach out to Alex, guys, if you're interested in environmental engineering, or if you want to get your PhD, or if you're in California, maybe you could go to one of her talks. I'm sure you're going to be doing some poster sessions before you graduate. So again, thank you so much, Alex, and we're going to say goodbye to 1% Nation, and then you and I can stay on. So bye-bye. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Hey, 1% Nation. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Alex Polasco. If you did, please consider subscribing, because I release videos for young engineers every Wednesday and Saturday so you can crush it in your career and become a 1% engineer. Cheers!